Trump getting ready to go hog wild in Iowa at the annual Roast and Ride Veteran Bikers event, just one day after appearing to get tough again on immigration after softening his rhetoric. We're going to ask his national spokesperson, Katrina Pierson, all about it coming up.
Plus, the State Department gives Hillary Clinton a big campaign gift. Logs of all of her meetings as Secretary of State won't be fully released until weeks after the election, denying voters a chance to see how many more big-time Clinton Foundation donors might have gotten preferential access.
And police making a major arrest in the murder case of two dedicated nuns in one of the poorest towns in America. We're going to get a live report coming up. And thank you for spending your Saturday with us. I'm Elizabeth Pran.
Nice to be with you. Nice to be with you at home. Good Saturday. I'm Leland Vittert. Welcome to America's election headquarters from Washington. Crowds are ready and waiting for Donald Trump in Des Moines, Iowa, where he'll join Senator Joni Ernst at her second annual Roast and Ride political rally. Last year, Trump was not one of the 7 Republican primary candidates who showed up at the event, but now the Hawkeye State is the battleground. Polls show a tight race between Trump and Hillary Clinton. Peter Ducey is at the Iowa State Fairgrounds, a familiar spot for him. Long line behind you, Peter.
There is a long line. People are getting ready here for Mr. Trump's arrival a few hours from right now after he leaves Las Vegas to get here. But this morning, even before he arrives and before we hear from him, he is on social media and he's using a tragedy in Chicago, the murder of NBA star Dwayne Wade's cousin, to make a point that he's been trying to make lately, that years of Democratic politicians in charge of large cities and inner cities has left things dangerous. So this morning, Donald Trump tweeted that, quote, Dwayne Wade's cousin was just shot and killed walking her baby in Chicago. Just what I have been saying, African Americans will vote Trump. And Trump has also spent some of his Saturday morning on social media making sure that his position on immigration is clear after some confusion about comments he made earlier in the week that his position on people in the country illegally who don't have long rap sheets may be softening. Trump now writes that, quote, heroin overdoses are taking over our children and others in the Midwest. Coming in from our southern border, we need strong border and wall. Trump also said this last night on Fox.
There will be no amnesty. There's no legalization. We're going to build a wall. It's going to be a tremendous, powerful wall. We're going to have great technology along with the wall, and we're going to stop people from coming in. Day one, we're going to get all of the gang members and the gang leaders and the drug dealers and all of these people that have illegally crossed and they've been in our country. We're going to get them out very, very, very fast.
So today Trump is coming here to the second annual Roast and Ride. The ride is going to come first. It is a 42-mile trek through Iowa that ends here at the Iowa State Fairgrounds just a few days after the big state fair ended. You can see that people are already lined up, and once they get through security, we can smell that the roast part of this event is already getting ready. So we're about 3 hours away from Mr. Trump, and we will have his remarks here live a little bit later on this afternoon. Leland?
All right, more with Pastor Mark Burns about that tweet regarding Dwayne Wade's cousin. Peter Ducey live in Iowa, and now we go to Trump campaign national spokesperson Katrina Pierson. Katrina, nice to see you.
Great to be here. Thank you.
You know, you think about it during the primary when Donald Trump was speaking and his immigration policy was so clear. Build a wall, deport 11 million illegal immigrants, and make America great again. It was simple. It was said over and over and over again. Why are things now becoming, as it relates to immigration, so much more complicated?
Well, Leland, it's not really complicated. Mr. Trump is just simply trying to have a discussion about what needs to happen and what he wants to do. And he has said many times in many rallies that he doesn't want to be like Barack Obama and start signing executive orders, and he will have to work with Congress to get some of the more complex things done. But his overall message has not changed. There is no path to citizenship. There is no path to legalization. Those here illegally will have to leave. And in order to even come back, they're going to have to pay fines and taxes to qualify for reentry after they get to the back of the line. This is nothing new.
All right, so even though he said earlier he's softening, we're not hearing anything new.
No, simply because the words that were being used prior to that discussion was deportation force, which we have ICE, and it is their job to deport illegal aliens. We already have that system in place. So he's just not using those words anymore. And he does want to work with people, which is why he says that, in order to get this process done. Again, this is going to have to be done in Congress. Mr. Trump wants to make sure that we have a good process in place, and we have to do some changing of our existing laws, not just enforce them, but we have existing laws that are keeping people who are doing things the right way, they're unable to get here.
So would it be fair to say that what we're hearing from Mr. Trump even today, or perhaps in his immigration policy speech next week that we know is planned, is really sort of a starting point for negotiation, or are those red lines for him?
Well, some of these issues are definitely red lines, like building the wall. There's no negotiation there.
Is there negotiation, though, on how many illegal immigrants leave?
Stop drug trafficking. We need to stop sex trafficking. I'm sorry?
I said, there's no negotiation on the wall, you say, but there is negotiation perhaps on who has to leave, when they have to leave, how they're going to be, quote unquote, rounded up?
Well, that is definitely the process that Congress will have to decide. So he's going to put forth his vision on what he thinks should be done and how it should be done in his speech. But really, we're talking about November and who's going to be the leader of this country. And there's really the only discussion on immigration we should be having are, here are your choices. You have a candidate in Donald Trump who does not want amnesty, who wants to build the wall to keep drug trafficking and sex trafficking out of this country, and someone who wants to enforce our current laws and in sanctuary cities. The other option, Hillary Clinton has already said in her first 100 days she wants amnesty. She doesn't like the wall, and she's just really not interested in enforcing these laws that we currently have on the books. Those are the two choices people have in November.
All right. So you get to those choices, and you've laid out actually very clear policy differences between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And you also think about Hillary Clinton's major flaws, if you will, or weak spots. Everything from the Clinton Foundation to the Rose Law Firm to Whitewater to the email scandal, email 2.0, Benghazi, or time as Secretary of State. The list goes on. We don't have that much time left, though. Why not hit her consistently on those things? Why, as we've seen over the past week, give her openings and give the press openings by going after Hillary Clinton on things like calling her a bigot or using these words that the press uses as distractions?
Well, Mr. Trump is talking about all of the above. As you mentioned, there's so many things to talk about, many things that people don't really get to hear in the media, which is one of the reasons why he discusses those things. But she does have serious problems, and that's why her trust numbers are extremely, extremely low. I think they're at 29% now. Mr. Trump wants to talk about everything because he wants to talk to everyone, because he wants to be president for everyone in the country.
All right. Katrina Pierson, we appreciate you being here. Pastor Mark Burns, also a Trump supporter, coming up in the next hour. Good to see you. Come back sometime soon.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Elizabeth?
All right, now to the other side of the aisle. In politics, timing is everything. And while Hillary Clinton is urging voters to the polls in November, the Obama administration now says the full release of Clinton's daily schedules from the State Department will not be available until December 30th. Our own Molly Henderberg joins us now with reaction to this very recent development. Hi, Molly.
Hi, Elizabeth. Yes, they're saying around December 30th. That's when the State Department has told the Associated Press that the last of the daily schedule records from when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State will be released. This is significant, as you said, because it will be after the election. So the Associated Press will not be able to complete its investigation into the relationship between the Clinton Foundation and Clinton as Secretary of State before people go to the polls. Here you see video of Clinton's motorcade as she was attending her first national security briefing as a presidential candidate in New York today. Donald Trump had his first briefing earlier this month. A federal judge ordered the State Department 7 months ago to start releasing Clinton's schedules. About half of them have been released, the State Department says. The AP found so far that, quote, more than half the people outside the government who met or spoke by telephone with Clinton while she was Secretary of State had given money, either personally or through companies or groups, to the Clinton Foundation. Clinton insists there was no pay-to-play going on here. And here's the State Department on the issue earlier this week.
You know, as we've said before, the State Department meets with a range of people, and a wide range of people, outside individuals and organizations, contact the State Department. Meeting requests, recommendations, proposals come to the department through a range of channels.
The Trump campaign says the Obama administration is shielding Clinton from accountability. A spokesman said, quote, "It is unacceptable that the State Department is now refusing to release her official schedule before the election in full. Voters deserve to know the truth before they cast their ballots." The AP says its lawyers asked State last night to move faster on this and provide all of Clinton's minute-by-minute schedules by October 15th. Elizabeth?
All right, Molly Hendenberg reporting live. Molly, thank you so much. Here to talk about all this is Wall Street Journal national political reporter Peter Nicholas. Peter, thank you so much for joining us. We just heard from Molly's reporting there. The State Department seemingly halting its release of Clinton's schedule. This on the heels, as we heard, of an AP report, which shows about half of the folks that she met with in some way or another ended up donating to the Clinton Foundation. Why is it so important that voters see her entire schedule?
Well, the question is, who did Hillary Clinton meet with when she was at the State Department? Did she meet with Clinton Foundation donors? The AP report showed that there were dozens and dozens of donors to the Clinton Foundation who got access to her. So the question is this a pay-to-play atmosphere that was prevalent at the State Department while she was there? Because of this announcement, it doesn't look like we'll have the full picture of exactly who she met with until after the election. And the notion is that this is some important information for voters to evaluate before November 8th. So this is a setback for those who want a fuller picture.
Okay, so we heard, for example, the Trump campaign say, listen, this is an example of the Obama administration shielding Hillary Clinton. But then you have the State Department. They spoke with reporters this week and they said, listen, the State Department meets with a range of people in a range of channels. What can we glean from these meetings thus far? And at the same time, why is it important that we do see the additional schedule details?
Well, we reported, for example, at the Wall Street Journal that a for-profit network of colleges called Laureate took part in a meeting at the State Department with hosted by Hillary Clinton with Yale University and Cornell, other nonprofit schools. Laureate was a donor to the State Department. Laureate employed Bill Clinton and paid them millions of dollars. An official from Laureate was at these meetings. So there's some concerns about why they would get that kind of access, and that did they get any sort of special access or treatment that an ordinary person who wants to meet with Hillary Clinton cannot get. And so that's really the question here. It's a liability and a point of vulnerability for Hillary Clinton's campaign that she's having to cope with. The fact that all these records won't be out until after the election is not necessarily good for the Trump campaign, which is hoping to exploit this issue and gain some traction.
And you talked a little bit about Laureate. So our viewers know at one point Bill Clinton was earning upwards of $16 million. And since that's one of the reasons where we've heard that now Chelsea is really at the helm of the Clinton Global Initiative. But does that still mean that they're family ties? Does that help or hurt the Clinton family?
Well, there's a thought even among people who are close to the Clintons and who support the Clintons and like them that this is an untenable situation, that right now the foundation is saying that Chelsea may well be involved if Hillary Clinton is elected president. Bill Clinton has said he will step down from the board. He won't raise money from the board. But the question is, does that go far enough? Or will the conflicts of interest allegations follow Hillary Clinton into the White House if she wins? There are many people, good Democrats, who say that the Clintons need to cut their ties to the foundation entirely, perhaps either shut it down or turn it over to an outside group like an independent group like the Gates Foundation, because otherwise there's going to be just tremendous scrutiny of the foundation donors, and overlapping interests with the Clinton White House should she win that will dog her through the first term.
You talked about dogging her through the first term. You've obviously been covering this from the very beginning, mostly starting off with the emails and the server. Now we're starting to see the focus shift to the Clinton Global Initiative. I want to take a step back and just get your perspective as you've been reporting on the Clinton family. Where do you see this going from here?
Well, I don't think these allegations are going to die out. I think the emails, there's going to be a steady drumbeat of emails being released that are some of which were recovered by the FBI during their investigation. These have been turned over to the State Department. They're going to be released to Judicial Watch and other advocacy groups and ultimately reviewed by the press. So this is going to be happening on a rolling basis for many months. And we'll learn more about what Hillary Clinton did once she was in the State Department. when the donors to the Clinton Foundation, if there are more calendar records come out and it's shown that there were more donors to the Clinton Foundation that met with Hillary Clinton, that'll be digested and that will be reported on, and that will be something that Hillary Clinton will have to answer for if she's president of the United States. So what it's looking like is these controversies are going to be following her into the White House if she wins, and it's something that she's not really going to be able to not put behind her, perhaps unless short of a dramatic break with the Clinton Foundation, which so far they're unwilling to make.
Yeah, very interesting. Peter Nichols, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to have you back as the story continues to develop. Thank you.
Good to be with you.
Hillary Clinton is a bigot who sees people of color only as votes, not as human beings worthy of a better future.
From the start, Donald Trump has built his campaign on prejudice and paranoia. He is taking hate groups mainstream and helping a radical fringe take over the Republican Party.
All right, that's just a sampling of the accusations of racism, bigotry flying between the two presidential candidates. Both campaigns have rolled out new racially fueled attack ads this weekend. So here to help sort through all the mudslinging is Matthew Continetti, editor-in-chief of the Washington Free Beacon. Matt, I want to start and I want to take a trip down memory lane and play just a quick soundbite for you and our viewers at home from John McCain in 2008. Take a listen.
He's an Arab. He is not... No?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you.
You see right away John McCain correcting someone there. Really, in terms of today, he was being quite polite politically. We don't see that right now.
What a difference 8 years makes.
Right.
I should say if John McCain were the nominee right now, he'd probably be beating Hillary Clinton in these polls. But
so what has changed? Why is this year so different? I mean, here, I know that politics is a contact sport, but keep in mind that we've been playing pictures or rolling pictures when we saw Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton at Donald Trump's wedding. So at one point they were friends?
at one point, right, yeah, and Trump says he bought her then, but that doesn't seem to have worked now. No, the difference is Donald Trump. I think that's pretty clear. He's the real change element in this election, and the election is really now a referendum on what you think of Donald Trump. And so that's what Secretary Clinton was doing in this speech last week. It wasn't so much about minority voters. They're going to vote for her overwhelmingly. It was about suburban white voters who probably don't want to vote for someone that is called a racist. So that's why she's attacking him on that. And that's why Donald Trump is trying to swing back, because he needs suburban white voters if he has any chance of winning.
So you're implying that it's a reaction to Donald Trump entering the race. I want to play another soundbite, so we're going to fast forward from 2008 to now. This is a clip of a recent ad from Hillary Clinton. We can sort of compare the two. Take a listen.
Farmer and white nationalists support Donald Trump.
Uncharted territory.
Right, and this ad is much less effective in my mind than another ad Hillary Clinton is playing, which just quotes Trump's own words. And so it's a little bit unfair to attack a candidate for people that he doesn't endorse, but who endorse him,
But
right?
she's using it to her advantage to associate them.
Absolutely, right. And Trump, of course, had that big gaffe earlier this year when he didn't disavow David Duke right off the bat. There was a moment, I think, actually, where Donald Trump could have maybe made a real appeal to minority voters. But as soon as he refused to disavow David Duke to Jake Tapper on CNN, I think there was no chance of that happening. You know, you even see him now. He's trying to make a policy case. He's backed off calling Hillary Clinton a bigot, which kind of steps on his own agenda. If he wants to make the policy case that his policies are going to be better than for minority voters than Hillary Clinton's, well, that's something that Republican candidates have done for decades. What they haven't done is call Hillary Clinton a bigot, which I don't think anyone really believes.
Okay, we've talked about some of the groups that they're being associated with, and I know that you've been talking a lot about the group alt-right. When we see these parties start to fracture and then we see, let's say, the associations take place, what does that mean come Election Day as we start to see the fracturing take place?
I think both parties are kind of riven by a lot of turmoil now and a real reevaluation of what it means to be a conservative, what it means to be a liberal, what it means to be a Republican or a Democrat. So remember, we still have the Bernie bros and all the pro-Bernie people, very populistic, democratic socialists on the Democratic side. On the right now, we're beginning to see groups of writers, really, or online trolls that call themselves the alt-right. There's no real organization there, and we're not
They'll
even sure.
dispute that.
We're not even sure how many of them there are. I mean, they're certainly on social media, they're certainly on the web, but there's no real constituency in the Republican Party for their white nationalist views. What they see, though, now is a moment of opportunity. They think Donald Trump is on their side, even if he hasn't embraced them. Right. And they're going to try to use this moment to become a more dominant faction in internal Republican and conservative politics.
But the effects on either of these candidates could be huge.
Well, right. Well, I think there's no future for a party that embraces outright racist rhetoric. So to the degree that the conservative movement, mainstream conservatives, or the Republican Party is seen to be associated with these alt-right groups, they're really kind of signing their death warrant electorally.
I'm not sure a year ago that you thought you'd be having this conversation with me.
I don't think any of us thought we would have any of these conversations
it's
a year ago.
Unbelievable. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully the next time you come on, we'll be focused more.
We can hope.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for joining us.
After Iowa, Trump heads to Phoenix, Arizona, then off to Detroit, part of his ongoing appeal to minority communities and arguing Democratic policies have in a lot of ways failed these communities, a message that could resonate in struggling Detroit, perhaps, but a lot of folks say his delivery is perhaps killing his message. Joining us now, Trump supporter, Pastor Mark Burns. Pastor, nice to see you, sir. Thank you for being with us.
Happy to be here.
You know, you might appreciate this line. My grandmother used to say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And reasonable people would agree that Donald Trump has got a lot of points that make sense about what's happened to the black community, especially over the past couple of decades. But is the way he's saying it alienating a lot of folks?
Well, you know, I really think this is a time where Donald Trump should be commended because, in general, the Republican Party do not reach out after the African-American community. But I believe for the first time in history in the Republican Party, you're going to see Donald Trump declaring to the African-American community and pointing out actual facts that has been plaguing our communities under a Democratic Party rule, and why it's so important that we as African-Americans, where our net worth is extremely low compared to other families and other ethnic groups in this family, the welfare that is plaguing our community, the food stamps that is plaguing our communities, and even the crime rate in some communities. This is the time where Donald Trump is really connecting to the African-American community.
But, Pastor, no one would argue that the African-American community in a lot of cities around the country is struggling. It certainly is. The question is what policies is Donald Trump putting forth that promises African-Americans in these communities a better future for them and their kids?
Well, see, I think it's that type of a dialogue that is really keeping our country so divided, and it is really a race-baiting.
Pastor, forgive me. I'm not trying to ask about. No. I'm trying to ask about policies. I'm trying to ask what's Trump going to do. Right. But that's what I'm saying. Let me get my statement out. I really think it's that type of a language and communication that's really keeping us divided, where Donald Trump has been speaking in plain language, dealing with issues that is going to impact not just the African-American community, but every community in this country, because poverty, sir, knows no color. Poverty don't care whether you're African-American or Hispanic-American. And that's what the Democratic Party has been doing. I'm still confused, though, Pastor. If by asking what policies Donald Trump is putting forth, that's dividing America?
Well, no. Hear what I'm saying. What I am simply saying is we shouldn't be talking about what is Donald Trump going to do for the African-American community. We should be talking about what Donald Trump, when he becomes president, is going to do for the United States of America.
So what's he going to do?
Every race. Because he's been speaking it from day one. Number one, we need jobs. But specifically within the African American community, parents need to have the right to choose the schools that their children can go to. There are some children born in underprivileged, underperforming neighborhoods and schools. They're automatically doomed to fail day one they enter the school system. And right now, Donald Trump is saying, when I'm president, I'm going to make sure that there's policies in place that's going to allow the parents to choose the school.
So school choice, you think, is going to would make a big difference in African American communities?
Without question, because African Americans, as soon as we, again, in many cases, not every case, but in many cases, and we need to quit using language like every black person is the same, every black person is in the same situation, and we're not. We're a diverse group of individuals. We're only connected by the heritage of our race, but we're still very diverse groups of individual people.
I hear there. I wanted to get your thoughts on this tweet from Donald Trump talking about Dwayne Wade's cousin, who was killed tragically in Chicago. And here's the tweet. It said, Dwayne Wade's cousin was just shot and killed walking her baby in Chicago. Just what I have been saying. African Americans will vote Trump. And there's been a lot of pushback on Twitter. This just came out in the past hour or two that Mr. Trump didn't offer any condolences, didn't talk about the family and their grief through this time, obviously having lost the mother of a child here. How do you feel about that? You think that's a fair criticism, or do you think Mr. Trump is right to make this a political issue here?
Well, first of all, as a pastor, I do offer my condolences. What a tragic event that is taking place, and it is obviously a sign of why the African American communities in the urban centers of our country really need a change of leadership to where, again, I'm not trying to politicize because I don't want to do that, but I think Donald Trump was simply trying to point out the passion that is even in his own heart, the why African Americans who are in some desperate places in our own country, while we're spending $4 trillion overseas with wars at Afghanistan, Iraq. Think about it. You just take $1 trillion and bring it back to our urban communities. Just $1 trillion and spend it specifically just on urban communities in our country. I think we would have crime rate would completely drop down. So without question, I think Donald Trump was just echoing and declaring to the country why it's so important that this crime rate that is plaguing, it's a fact, plaguing our African American communities come to a minimum.
All right. Well, I don't know where we're going to find an extra $1 trillion when we're $17 trillion in debt, but we'll look past her. We appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Happy to be here.
All right, good to see you. Liz?
All right, now to the other side of the aisle. Hillary Clinton is dodging accusations she held private meetings with Clinton Foundation donors during her time as Secretary of State as an exchange for their donations. Her team blasting the Associated Press report, saying that half of her one-on-one meetings as Secretary of State were with foundation donors. Clinton says the investigation only looked at snippets of her calendar. The AP defending their story, saying the reporters looked at all available documents and have asked for more. The controversy leaves the Democratic nominee vulnerable to attacks from across the aisle, and one that Donald Trump has made efforts to take advantage of. So let's have a fair and balanced debate. Red Alert Politics editor Ron Meyer and Democratic strategist Mustafa Tamiz joins us now. Thank you so much for joining me, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, I want to start with you, Mustafa. Reaction is coming out now that we've learned that the State Department is effectively going to be withholding about the other half of her calendar until December 30th. How does Hillary Clinton really dodge any criticism between now and November?
Look, first, I think AP should be given 4 Pinocchios for their story. Anyone looking at that story beyond that first paragraph knows it was completely, false and misleading. When you look at 153 people, any Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton or otherwise, in 2 years, they've seen over 1,000 folks. So it was a wrong story. AP should be, ashamed of itself.
I'm going to have let Ron react to this because you use the word false, you use the word misleading, but the AP has in there that 85 out of 154 meetings resulted in some type of donation to the Clinton Foundation. You're saying that that's not true, and then I want to get Ron's reaction.
But here's the issue. Here's the problem, is that Hillary Clinton and Mustafa are saying that there's smoke and no fire, that out of these, you're seeing a lot of meetings where a lot of donors showed up at the State Department. I don't care what the percentage is. It happened. You're saying that there's all smoke and no fire. Here's the problem. Julian Assange is coming out and saying, hey, maybe I do have the fire and we have more stuff to release. The judge just ordered the State Department to release 15,000 more emails. And so maybe the fire does exist, and it's going to be a problem for Hillary Clinton, and it's creating a bigger problem because of the fallout from it, especially with a key part of the Democrat base, millennials. We run a millennial polling average. Right now, she's around 40%. You have to remember, President Obama got 60%. You get into the data, it's because they think she's dishonest. This backs up that point, that people think she's dishonest, that she did things in the State Department for her own personal gain. Name me somebody in Congress who has a personal charity that people donate to. You donate to campaigns, that's one thing, but a personal private charity is something totally different. It backs up this view that she's corrupt, that she's dishonest, and that's why she's not running away with this election. That's why it's still very close, and Donald Trump has a chance if he plays error-free baseball.
Okay, Mustafa, I want you to respond to that.
Look, one, she's a double-digit lead, so she's very far away from Donald Trump. But look at the evidence that they pointed out. They said there was a meeting with Muhammad Yunus, who's a Nobel Peace Prize winner, who founded modern, micro lending across the world, and they said there was a meeting with a banker and a donor. This is ridiculous, and once you read beyond that first paragraph of AP, you realize it. And I think that, again, I think AP should be ashamed, and I know they're rolling back their story quite a bit from what they originally started. But getting back to the other part, Hillary Clinton has been working on this for her entire career. The charity, they've not taken any money from it, personal money from the charity. They've been doing good around the world. And to denigrate the work they've been saving lives, lifting people out of poverty, these are important things that have to be done.
Okay.
So you're saying the fact that Hillary Clinton, under her State Department rule, Bill Clinton got $5 million from a for-profit college. You're saying that money was free and clear, right?
But now she's saying, former president of the United States. He was the former president of the United States who started this charity. You make it sound like Hillary Clinton was, this is a pay-to-play type of scenario. This is manufactured outrage.
Those are the accusations, and at the same time, we're learning that the State Department is withholding the other half of her calendar. When this is all supposed to be about transparency, if she wants to earn the trust of the American people, then why isn't she okay with her calendar being released?
That's right. I think she's perfectly okay with her calendar being released, but the State Department has to go through its process. They have to make sure that there's not classified information in those calendars. Those meetings affect people that are representing our government around the world, and we want to roll their names out.
Now they care about classified information in Hillary Clinton. Now they do, right? Nothing mattered when she had her own private email server, but now they're coming to make sure. And we say, and hold on,
as soon as possible.
Okay, Ron, you can have the last word, and then we have to wrap it up.
Thank you. Okay, this is why Jason Chaffetz is saying when he's getting documents from the State Department, most of the stuff's been redacted. Stuff from the FBI has been redacted. Here's the issue. Mustafa, you might be one of the 1 in 3 Americans that think she's honest. 33%. That's not very much. And here's the thing, is that, Donald Trump is staying closer in the race. And because of this issue, it's because people don't think she's dishonest. And it's a really sad state for American politics when it's a race to see who's either disliked or distrusted the most. It's a sad state of American politics. She should be above this if she really thinks she's going to be the next president of the United States.
Ron, Mustafa, I wish we had more time. I'm going to have to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen. We appreciate it. I hope we continue this conversation. All right, back to politics. It's a tight race in Iowa where Donald Trump is doing some good old-fashioned retail politicking today. You may remember Trump lost the Iowa caucuses to Ted Cruz. Hillary Clinton beat Bernie Sanders, but only barely. The race was decided by a coin flip. 6 months later, what's the mood in Iowa? Brianne Fahnenstiel is a political reporter for the Des Moines Register, and she joins us now. Brianne, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start off by saying, listen, the polls there really show the two neck and neck. There's only 6 electoral votes up for grabs. Why are both candidates looking to Iowa right now?
Both candidates are looking to Iowa right now because it is so close. There are a lot of states where Hillary Clinton's really pulling away, but this is one where it's neck and neck. The polls are within the margin of error, so Donald Trump really has a chance to win Iowa. And so he's been here quite a bit already in the last couple of weeks, and we'll see him here again today, this afternoon.
Okay, you said that there's a number of states where Hillary Clinton is pulling away. Iowa historically has gone blue. So there is some criticism that Donald Trump is spending so much time there. Do you think he really has a chance to win Iowa, and what evidence do you have of that?
Sure. In Iowa, we don't have the large minority populations that a lot of other states do. So Hillary Clinton's really targeting the African-American communities, the Latino communities. And so Iowa has a lot of white, middle-class, blue-collar workers that really are tuning into Donald Trump's message right now.
All right, well, give us a sense of Donald Trump's ground game in the state of Iowa. Has he had a big presence there? Does he have folks who work for him that have been on the ground?
Sure, he does. And just this past week, they announced a new round of field directors that they've hired. A lot of them are people who've been in the game in Iowa for a long time. They really know the lay of the land. So Donald Trump is starting to ramp up his ground game now going into Labor Day. So I think we'll see even more of that going forward.
Tell me a little bit about what Iowa voters care about. Does it reflect a lot of other voters across the U.S.?
Yeah, Iowa voters are really similar to voters across the country in that they care about the economy, they care about their jobs, but Iowa's agricultural industry really is big here. So a lot of strategists are telling us that Donald Trump's going to need to tap into that to really convince people here that he knows what he's talking about when it comes to agriculture and that he can advocate for their interests.
Okay, so you've said what you feel Donald Trump needs to tap into, but like we had mentioned earlier in the interview, that the state has typically gone blue. What does Hillary Clinton need to do going forward? How can she combat the fact that Donald Trump does seem to have a pretty organized ground game in Iowa?
Well, Hillary Clinton is just as organized, and I think she'll be competing for those votes, too. Strategists are telling us to look to the suburbs. That's where Hillary Clinton's going to try and win over, upper-class, middle-class white women particularly. So you'll see that, but, she's got just as great a ground game, and she's been here as well. But if you look at the electoral math, she maybe doesn't need to make as big a play for Iowa, so we may not see her here quite as much as we'll see Donald Trump.
That's what I was going to ask you. When they look at their ground game across the state of Iowa and the different sects, the different suburbs, how do they tackle all those different demographics?
You know what, they have people on the ground, and it's their job to be out knocking on doors, talking to people, doing a lot of local retail politics like what we'll see today. At this event, I think we've got a lot of people who are maybe sitting on the fence. So this is a really good opportunity for Donald Trump to kind of tap into some people who are still making up their minds, who still want to be persuaded.
All right, Brianne, thank you for joining us. Iowa is known for its retail politics, and it's not given up on that. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And it's not just Iowa that's up for grabs. Just ahead, our political panel looks at a neighboring state that both candidates would like to have in their win column.
Today, the vice presidential nominee attacking Mr. Trump's comments about immigration and race, calling them, quote, prejudicial and bigoted. Joining us now, Scott Brown, former Republican senator from Massachusetts and a Fox News contributor. Welcome, Senator. Great to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Emma. Great to be on.
Out on the stump in a 1-2 punch this week, not only is Hillary Clinton throwing in the race card, her running mate is too, tying Trump to Ku Klux Klan values, echoing Mrs. Clinton's accusations that Trump is, quote, taking hate groups mainstream. Now, even though Mr. Trump has disavowed any endorsement from Klan and other hate groups, some say this is a move to deflect attention away from her own high-profile problems with concerns over her foundation donors in the alleged pay-to-play charges to those deleted emails. Do you agree with that?
Well, of course I do. It's the Clinton way that they do things, that intersection of money and politics that has been so prevalent in their political life. Whenever there is a conflict, they always feign anger, then they blame, and then they try to shift and adjust and adapt. It's very typical. Listen, I know Donald Trump, and there are many people who know Donald Trump, and the things that they're saying are typical Democratic playbook 101, kind of divide and conquer the different constituencies in this country to try to gain some tactical advantage. And I think it's going to backfire.
You know, with Mrs. Clinton saying Trump aligns himself with hate groups, doesn't she open herself up to some criticism as well with her support for some of the openly hostile members of the Black Lives Matter movement who make no secret of their hatred for cops and advocate violence against law enforcement?
Well, of course, you saw what happened with those that rhetoric, that anti-police rhetoric. I have my Blue Lives Matter pin on showing that support, and will continue to show that support. And then the fact that you had a murderer, the father of a murderer, standing behind her at one of her rallies, and she doesn't know how he got there. They know everybody who's there, and just another drip, drip, drip effort of lies that are being put forth by the Clinton team. And it's unfortunately very typical, but
Donald Trump needs to focus, Uma, on a couple of things, as he's doing in the Black and Latino communities. It's jobs, it's job creation, it's school choice, and it's safety and security of the people living in those inner cities. Tim Kaine represents that establishment. He's part of the problem. He's the person and one of the people that has been perpetuating that cycle of always being having the inability to have school choice and have those great paying jobs in the city. So that's the choice that American people will have, especially in the inner cities.
Well, you know, the Clinton attacks followed Donald Trump calling her, quote, a bigot and seizing an opportunity to say that she isn't doing anything to help minority communities. But in the big picture, for both candidates to go down this road of name calling, is that really wise at a time when voters are trying to decide who can best lead this country? Even Trump advisor Dr. Ben Carson is saying using the word bigot isn't productive, and he wants both sides to knock off the racist accusations. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I respect Dr. Carson, obviously, and you saw the governor of Ohio, John Kasich, obviously ran a very positive campaign, but look what happened to them. They both got crushed. People actually say they don't like to have the kind of negativity, but in reality, sometimes that negativity forces the other people to actually talk about very important and sensitive issues that are in everybody's daily life. You know, you say something, they have to react, because if you don't, then you're guilty by not reacting. So there is some benefit to the negative advertisements and negative statements. I'm hopeful, though, that they'll focus on the things that matter: debt, deficit, taxes, spending, jobs, national security, energy, immigration. Those are the things that I and others want to hear about.
Now, I hear you, but there are a lot of folks who don't like the negativity so far in this campaign and fear that it's going to get worse. I also want to get to the concerns over Trump's immigration stand, with some conservatives this week uneasy about whether he is softening his stand on what to do with the 11 million undocumented people who have not been accused of criminal activity but have been living here for years, and then 2 days later saying there would be no amnesty. Let's listen in for just a moment to what he said.
Sure.
Take a person that's been here for 15 or 20 years and throw them and the family out. It's so tough, Mr. Trump. I mean, I have it all the time. It's a very, very hard thing. There will be no amnesty. There's no legalization. We're going to build a wall. It's going to be a tremendous, powerful wall. We have to remember that we have a country that's based on laws, and the people are here illegally. So we will see what we will see. But we're going to start off by securing the border, by getting rid of a horrible criminal element that's causing tremendous havoc, drug dealers, gang members, etc. And I think people will be extremely happy.
So are you concerned about the lack of clarity at this point? I know he's promising to offer up some specifics on his immigration policy in a couple of weeks, but when voters hear different messages in the same week from Mr. Trump about amnesty, etc., doesn't this confuse the issue at a time when he needs to solidify support from independents and the GOP base?
There's no one, Uma, that thinks that Hillary Clinton will be strong on the border security. They're not going to. She's not going to do the wall. She doesn't care. She's already calling them immigrants. They're not. They're here. They're illegals. They're here illegally. They've broken the law. And Donald Trump, what I heard there is he's thoughtful and compassionate when it's coming to obviously those people in those unfortunate circumstances. He is a person, he has a good heart. I know that for a fact. But what he's also saying, which is so critically important, is that whatever policy comes out, whether it's proposed by Congress, and Ted Cruz and others should help him, is these people can't get any benefits during that time period of whether they're going to have the ability to work or the ability to stay here under some mechanism. They're not going to get the health care. They're not going to get the housing. They're not going to get the food stamps. We've got to secure the border. We've got to do the wall. We have to get the criminal elements out of here without even blinking.
Some real specifics in terms of what he plans to do. Okay.
Absolutely.
So in terms of going
I already
forward.
know what he's going to do. I already know what he's going to do. You know, he said it many times. He's not going to lose that base of voters. They understand that the difference between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump on that issue is like night and day. It's not even close.
All right, Senator. Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to see you, Emma.
Appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.
Well, Hillary Clinton receives her first national security briefing as the Democratic nominee for president. Mrs. Clinton arriving this morning for the briefing at an FBI facility in White Plains, not far from her New York home. This as pay-to-play allegations linger over her family's charity and her time as the leader of the State Department. Molly Henneberg joining us now live from our D.C. bureau with more. Molly, is the State Department slowing down the release of more of those Hillary Clinton records?
Hi, Uma. We're talking about her daily schedules from when she was Secretary of State, detailing to whom she spoke by phone and with whom she met in person. 7 months ago, a judge ordered the State Department to start releasing those schedules, and about half of them have been made public. Now the State Department says it will take until the end of December to release the remaining 2,700 pages. The Associated Press has been investigating the relationship between the Clinton Foundation and Clinton as Secretary of State and found that, quote, more than half the people outside the government who met or spoke by telephone with Clinton while she was Secretary of State had given money, either personally or through companies or groups, to the Clinton Foundation. Clinton dismissed the report and said earlier this week, quote, there's a lot of smoke and there's no fire. This AP report, put it in context, this excludes nearly 2,000 meetings I had with world leaders, with countless other meetings with U.S. government officials when I was Secretary of State. It looked at a small portion of my time. The AP said it excluded federal officials and foreign leaders because those would have been a normal part of her job. Uma?
So what's been the reaction from the Trump campaign to all this news so far?
The Trump campaign says voters deserve to know the truth before Election Day. A spokesperson said, quote, once again, the rigged system is rushing to protect Hillary Clinton. Instead of counting on her friends in the Obama administration to shield her from accountability, Hillary Clinton should immediately demand that these public records be released before voting begins. Late last night, the AP says it asked State to move faster on this and provide all of Clinton's schedules by October 15th. Uma?
All right, Molly, thank you very much. Let's bring in Fox News military analyst Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North for more on what happens in these intelligence briefings and the impact that it has on the presidential candidates who are now privy to sensitive information about threats to the U.S. and other security issues. Colonel North is also the author of Counterfeit Lies and the host of War Stories. Welcome, sir. It's good to have you on the program again.
Good to be back with you, Uma. This is the Ollie and Molly segment of the show.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, it was Mrs. Clinton's turn today. She is someone who is used to handling security briefings in her time as Secretary of State. But it was interesting to note that following Donald Trump's first briefing earlier this month, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who accompanied Trump for that briefing, said the Obama-Clinton policies are in stark contrast to the current intel. What's the impact of having these briefings for the candidates right now?
Well, first of all, I don't think they're going to let her take any of the paper home from that FBI skiff up there, given the record that she's got. And I kind of wonder if the briefers are going to have the guts to tell her about the mess that she left behind. I mean, you think about it. Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, and Vladimir Putin are playing our president like a harp. And this all started on her watch at the State Department. If you consider that this week you had 4 Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps naval incidents in the Persian Gulf, and there's going to be more of those to come. You've got Russia threatening Ukraine and supplying S-300 surface-to-air missiles to protect Iranian nuclear sites. And I note that neither of these candidates brought their vice presidential nominees to these briefings, which makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever.
You think that makes a big difference to have everybody on board on the same page when it comes to these type of briefings?
Yeah, look, I mean, this is, of course, the person that each of them would have to turn over the reins to if they became disabled or they, God forbid, got assassinated or something.
No, it's a fair point.
You'd think you'd want to have them up on the step as to what's really going on even before the election.
What about critics who are concerned that this classified information that's being given to people who are on the campaign trail may not be responsible in how they use this information and possibly compromise sensitive situations if they go public with what they know?
Well, look, I'll give you an example of where that worked. In the briefings that Ronald Reagan was given in 1980 before the election, he determined then, based on what he saw in those briefings, that he was going to build a missile defense system for the United States of America. It began after those briefings showed him the magnitude of the nuclear threat to the United States of America, which, by the way, that system was developed. It was called Star Wars, or the ballistic missile defense system is the proper name for it. Today, not one city in America is protected from a single nuclear weapon, much less a volley of them. And you've now got, this is happening. The North Koreans, you mentioned the book, the Counterfeit Lies, describes how the North Koreans are working with the Iranians to build nuclear weapons and the means of delivering them. And we still don't have something that we can use to protect the heartland of America. So Ronald Reagan used those briefings in helping to shape his policy right from the get-go, which of course came to fruition at Reykjavik when he said to Gorbachev, I'm not going to stop building it.
No, indeed. So it had a tremendous impact. Come back, everybody. Well, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump trading barbs and new attack ads, bringing up the controversial and divisive issues of race. Mrs. Clinton releasing an ad this week tying Trump to hate groups. Trump firing back with his own ad featuring the controversial super predator remark she made back in the 90s. Joining us now with some insights about the direction of this campaign and where it's headed, we have John Fund, who is a columnist for the National Review magazine. Welcome, John.
Headed down.
Headed down.
In tone and substance.
So here we are in the middle of, towards the end of August, right before Labor Day, and the campaigns have now taken this pivot to go after each other in a very direct way that really is quite divisive, quite negative, and very insulting to both sides. How do you think voters respond to this?
We know how voters respond. Every 4 years, about 40% of eligible adults don't vote for president. One of the reasons is trivia like this. Out of proportion. So I think it's a disservice to the voters, and frankly, even by the standards of this campaign, it's a new low.
So when you take a look at what some of the Republicans are saying right now, they believe that the Clinton camp is making this turn in a way to deflect the attention off of her controversy and the donor problem, the emails, etc. It's been a tough week for her particularly.
But there's another reason. She wants to boost voter turnout among minorities. Let's face it, she's not Barack Obama. And she doesn't have the level of enthusiasm that Barack Obama had in minority communities. So she's trying to turn this into a referendum. Do you want me, even though I'm an elderly white person, or do you want the racist? And as well, 25 years ago, Bill Clinton signed a law in Arkansas affirming the fact the Arkansas state flag was celebrating the Confederacy, honoring the Confederacy.
That's right.
He also, a few years ago, said, in dismissing Barack Obama, he said a few years ago he would be serving us coffee.
Right. He did make that remark.
And Hillary Clinton has had lots of supporters who waved the Confederate flag in 2008 at her rallies. Let's go back to Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan said it best. Lots of people in a big country may support me. Doesn't mean I support them.
We're talking about also the fact that Trump seems to be closing the gap in some states, but it's the states where the most important races is where in states he still has a distance to go. But he is trying to meet with different leaders from the Hispanic and African American communities. What impact is that having on his image, you think, to those who are sitting on the fence to say, whether or not they believe he has their interests at heart?
I don't think this is about trying to reach minority voters. I think Trump is going to have the typical low numbers that a Republican has in a presidential race. This is an appeal to white suburban, especially women voters, who don't want to vote for someone who's perceived as mean or nasty or, alienated from a diverse population. I think this is a comfort level question. And I think it's part of a smart strategy that his campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, is pursuing. I don't think it's going to get him minority votes, but it may allow moderate Republicans to say, well, he's really being attacked unfairly. He is trying to reach out and talk to all Americans.
Do you see him as more disciplined and more focused in these last 2 weeks?
How could he not be?
I'm asking you,
3 weeks ago,
do people feel like they're going to see more of this going forward?
3 weeks ago, the campaign was a train wreck. It has stabilized now. I think the new management has helped. And Trump is now reading from speeches, which means he makes fewer mistakes and fewer times that he goes completely over the top. So clearly, it's calmed a lot of people down because they see a candidate who, at least for now, can run a normal campaign and try to appeal to voters rather than make his gaffe of the day the news item.
If he continues to stick to this message of playing up the concerns over the Clinton Foundation and the concerns about the emails, do you think that is a winning strategy for him? And does that put her on the defensive, continue to put her on the defensive going forward, since we have 11 mainstream media outlets already calling for the closing of the foundation? The Democrats seem to be concerned that this could be a real issue for her going
In
forward.
1996, Bill Clinton had a campaign finance scandal that reduced his turnout among his base voters and drove independence to Bob Dole. He still won, but he won by much less than people predicted. Scandal doesn't win an election. Scandal, I think, bleeds people away from your opponent. Some Hillary supporters may vote for Gary Johnson, the Libertarian. The real issue here, though, is Donald Trump has to talk about jobs and the economy, because that's the thing that people really care about, the fact that their wages on the average have not gone up in 15 years. I think he does have to talk about scandal, but he has to talk about real issues that involve people in their daily lives.
Very interesting. Always good to see you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us with your insights. Really, really important time that we're living through, and I know that we're going to be checking back with you often.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Meanwhile, back in this country, and a story that continues in the spotlight, as we reported earlier, the State Department says it will not release the rest of Hillary Clinton's daily meeting schedules ahead of Election Day. Now, this news after an earlier Associated Press report alleged that more than half of the people that Mrs. Clinton met with as Secretary of State were major donors to her family's charitable foundation. Donald Trump and other Republicans calling on Mrs. Clinton to jump in and end this delay by releasing those documents herself. Joining us now with reaction, Ambassador Jim Woolsey, who's a former director of the CIA and chairman of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Welcome, sir. Good to have you on the program today.
Good to be back with you.
Let me get your reaction to news about this delay, the fact that the State Department says it cannot possibly release this information before Election Day.
What really struck me is that even after you exclude the foreign government representatives and the U.S. government representatives who met with the Secretary, as they do in the numbers they show, you still, from outsiders, have over half of them with a relationship of having given money to the State Department, the individuals involved, the foundation, whatever. I find that really a very striking number, and it would seem to me that fairness would suggest that all of those people who were meeting with the Secretary at least ought to have their identity disclosed, unless there's some classified reason to keep it secret.
The fact that the judge has intervened and asked for the release of these documents certainly puts the campaign on the defensive. It's been a particularly tough week for Mrs. Clinton with all the news coming out about this, and a number of news organizations asking her to come forward with more information and also to close the Clinton Foundation. We also learned about what they call a bleach bit, which actually erases emails in a way that you can't get to them. Chairman Trey Gowdy pointed that out this week in an earlier interview. It's like an electronic shredder. Excuse me. What did you make of that news?
Well, that's a very tough bit of technology, and effective, as from what I've heard. And I suppose if you're going to shred something, you may as well go ahead and shred it thoroughly. We didn't shred things thoroughly before our embassy was taken over by the Iranians in '79, and they put the shreds back together to find out what had been in the U.S. communications. And so one has to do a job right, I suppose, but it strikes me as a lot of attention to this situation, and when you put it together with the meeting schedule for the outsiders that is so thorough and so large, it's not good from the point of view of the way one would run the State Department, I don't think.
And we'll continue to see more fallout, I am sure, as we expect more emails to be released in the days ahead. I want to switch